infinite complacence, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
So on this episode of Into the Fray, I welcome Jeremy of the Infinite Rabbit Hole podcast on with me. And you can find him at theinfiniterabbithole.com. And I assume probably anywhere that you can find podcasts, right? Jeremy, welcome on the show.
Thank you, Shannon. I'd just like to say that it's nice to know that you're a human.
We
had a nice little conversation before the show, and it was very pleasant to know that you talk as if you're just a normal human being, and that's really cool.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I try to put that out there on the pod, but I realize that, people that hear me every week, they probably just have a certain thought about me, whatever that may be. But yes, at least I think I'm human. If I cut, I bleed, but that might just be the red robot juice that they create for the Matrix that we're living in, right?
Yeah. It could be.
Yeah, so before we go into your encounter and, maybe some of your favorite topics when it comes to this or cases, whatever that may be, whatever subjects that may be, let's talk about your podcast for a minute. And first of all, I think that the title is a great just encapsulation of all of this, period. I mean, it doesn't get any more simple than that because, and I've said it many times, like, let's go down the rabbit hole and, let's really dive in here, and all the different tendrils and threads that come off of any of the subjects that we cover. How did you get your start in it? We can talk about the name if you wanted. I don't know if that's a cool origin story or not. But yeah, talk about your pod. What's the format? Is it heavily just research, kind of a solo deal? Do you do interviews? What's the format over there at Infinite Rabbit Hole?
Well, we kind of do a little bit of everything. When we first started, it was just me and my buddy Jake discussing all the topics of the strange and the unknown from two different points of view. I am just a person who loves folklore, mythologies, cryptids, anything within the paranormal, supernatural realm. I mean, even as far as to the alternate reality theories such as simulation and hollow earth and flat earth and all of it. I just love it all. Anything that's got a mystery to it is something that I just indulge into. And my buddy Jake is a diehard Christian, and he brought a point of view to our conversations that was completely opposite of mine. And we were just like, this is pretty good. We kind of like this. And the people who are finding the show were saying the same thing. Like, this is really cool. This is two people talking about something that I love from two different points of view. And they're not arguing. They're not calling each other names. They're discussing this, and they're bringing both a spiritual and scientific aspect to the show. So as we were growing, we kind of grew into adding more roles through other co-hosts, and we eventually added my buddy CJ, who I also found through podcasting, and he was a very occult or witchcraft kind of guy. So he brought a whole nother aspect to this that neither Jake or I we didn't have any feet to walk on when it came to those subjects. And then we eventually added Jeff, who is he is a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist. I mean, the government is out to get you. The world is flat. Everything. There were multiple civilizations before man touched Earth, and man, he really really grew the show with his point of view. And we just had a really good point where we were, 4 different guys, 3 different guys. And eventually we added Kenzar, who was what we claim as our first number one fan, because she reached out in a really heartfelt email. And I had her come on to guest for a topic of her choice, and she chose the Wendigo because she's from Canada. So we talked about the Wendigo for 2 episodes straight, and she did so well. And it was very pleasant to be able to talk to somebody who loved the show so much that we offered her a spot on the show. Eventually, she took over as, the everyday listener, and she brought questions that none of us really thought about when it came to these topics, because, we're not listening to the show, we're recording it, and we're looking at it from our points of view, not from, the everyday person. So that was really cool. Unfortunately, my buddy Jake had to leave because he's doing really cool things. He's starting a family, and he's ending his career in the Navy, as I did just about a year ago. I took this as an opportunity to do what I want to do with the show. The Infinite Rabbit Hole doesn't really have a story behind its name other than the hardest thing you'll ever do when you create something such as a podcast, and that's naming it. It's an incredibly hard feat. And we just kind of threw a bunch of words at a wall. And when something stuck, we were like, hey, that works. Infinite Rabbit Hole. Sorry, Shannon, not a really cool story there. But what I really wanted to do with this thing that Jake and I have birthed, now that it's 100% mine, I wanted to dive more into the documentary aspect of this world. So for the last, I'd say 10, 15 episodes, I've been doing just that. I've been documenting amazing stories around the world of the strange and the unknown, and anything that parallels our reality. And I'll tell you, I'm extremely proud of the project that I'm a part of. All of this got started with the story that we're going to talk about today.
Yes, and it happens to be a Bigfoot story, which I'm very excited to hear. I do not know the details very happily, as you know. I like to be surprised. And you say that this is a Bigfoot encounter when you were 9, and as you say, it did propel you into loving just strange things, right? So prior to this Bigfoot encounter, you were 9, and I don't know how old you are, but prior to that, were you really aware of the Bigfoot subject at all, or what a Bigfoot was?
Absolutely not. And that's something I like to stress about this story, is that up until this point, and even, a good couple of years after it, none of this really was of interest to me, nor did I ever have any real indoctrination into it. And, I never watched TV shows about this kind of stuff. Never read a comic book where, a Bigfoot could be in, or a book, or anything of the such. And, paranormal was just something, ghosts. That was it. Very, very fringe knowledge of aliens existing, but they were little green men from Mars back then. It's not anything to where I am now. So to answer your question as short as I can, no, not at all.
Well, yeah, let's dive into your encounter, and then we shall see where the Bigfoot rabbit hole takes us as far as the discussion goes after.
All right. So there's 2 parts to this story, and I just want to be 100% clear with you. Yes, I do believe that this is a Bigfoot story, but I'm not 100% certain that it is a Bigfoot. It's not like I walked up to it and, took DNA samples from it and looked it over as best I could at 9 years old. But the story I had, the Bigfoot is honestly the best fit for what I saw. So, and that's the way that I sell it. It's a Bigfoot story. So the story started off, and honestly, I've never told the story where I gave the location, but I'll actually do that here for you. It is in Windham County, Vermont. I'm not going to give the exact town because the property that this happened is still owned by my family, and I don't want anything to, I don't want people showing up there. So
Yeah, let's not do that.
so we'll just leave it at that. But I was 9 years old, and well, what do 9-year-old boys do when they're in the middle of the woods? They walk around with BB guns, and that's what I was doing at that time. I had just gotten a really cool scope for my BB gun, and I was doing some shooting at various things within the woods, and I'm not very proud of it, but boys at that age shoot anything with a BB gun. So that's what I was looking for. And I got to a point in the woods where there was a field and just a bubble in the middle of the woods that we were very aware of. We knew it was there. In fact, my relative who owns the property used to go down there and mow it down for us, and we used to play kickball and soccer and baseball and football down there all the time, just us kids. From the point of view from their back patio, they could actually look over the hill and see the field from there. It was always a safe place to play. But it was so early in the springtime. I believe it was during my spring break from school when I was 9. Not 100% certain on that. Again, this happened a very long time ago. I'm 35 now, by the way, Shannon. So this is a very long time ago. And I knew that when the grass is long, I can go down there, throw sticks, twigs, rocks into the grass, and sometimes I'll get a bird or two to fly up. Well, that's what I was going down there to do. And I was walking around the field in a clockwise motion. So I was walking towards my left, and I was just going to walk around the whole thing. I mean, the field's pretty big. I'd say it'd be about the size of 2 football fields side by side, pretty close to even on all sides. And I got, I don't say about 30, 40 feet. It was very early in this little endeavor that I was going on when I saw a deer sitting out in the middle of the field. And I hadn't noticed it, prior, but I looked out there, and through the tall grass, you can see it out there. You can see the white tail. I remember that very, very vividly. Well, I was going to practice my aim on the butt of a deer. So I raised my BB gun to my eye, and I found the deer, and then all of a sudden the deer was gone. And I thought it just ran away. So I put my BB gun down, and I looked, and something was carrying it over its left shoulder. Something very tall, not as big as I would say Patty is, much thinner, but covered in hair. And it wasn't a bear. Bears I don't think can hold a deer over their left shoulder and hold it with their left arm. But whatever it was, definitely scared the living daylights out of this deer, because I've never heard a deer scream, but this deer was making a sound that that it knew that it was in horrible danger. 9 years old, it's not something that I wouldn't want my 9-year-old now to ever hear that sound. I mean, it's a very, very scary sound. But as this thing's just walking to the tree line from the field, whatever it was, it took that left shoulder, or that left hand that was holding that deer on its shoulder, grabbed its neck and pulled it out and smacked it against a tree, and then just continued to walk off into the woods. And that's my story. I mean, that's it. I don't have anything else. I do have one other thing that might possibly be a Bigfoot as well, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. But that's it, Shannon. That's the whole thing.
Well, yes, I guess I could see where that might pique your interest slightly in the subject. Wow. Okay. That is actually an incredible sighting, I have to say. I mean, you said it was short, but that doesn't always mean that it's not fantastic and incredible and jaw-dropping, and that one is, because you don't hear a whole lot of encounters where people actually will see a Bigfoot carrying something, holding something, executing the coup de grace for that poor deer that, as you say, was screaming in the mortal danger that it was in. Okay. Thinner than Patty. What was the color of the hair?
I would say, I mean, you're asking me to look back quite a ways, but
Yeah.
I mean, the only color that comes to me is brown, maybe in a really dark auburn, possibly, but definitely on the brown side of the spectrum. I know a lot of people will report anything from beige all the way to black, but mine was pretty close to the center of that spectrum.
And it never turned its face towards you, even in profile?
No. I did not know that thing was anywhere near me. That I had zero clue. I mean, I was 9 years old. I'm not the best tracker. I'm not the best I don't have the mindset for stopping and listening to things. I didn't even know the deer was in the field when I got there. I mean, I looked right out to the field, didn't even see the thing. So the only thing I saw from it as it moved from, I mean, what the real scary part of this was that in order for it, if it was walking a complete straight line, when it grabbed the deer, when it was in my scope to where it exited, I would say from my position, it exited probably about the 1 o'clock position. So that thing must have entered the field close to me. And
Mm,
that's the really scary part of it,
right.
that keeps me up at night sometimes when I do think about this. But the second part of this that I wanted to touch on too is another part that really keeps me up at night. But I'll answer the rest of your questions on this one first.
Yeah, thank you. So, okay, so this is again, and to reiterate, and you already have, but I want to say again, you're 9, so I'm not, and this is a long time ago. I'm not trying to, if you don't remember, to say, I don't know, I don't remember, no problem. I totally understand that. If you could guess, though, how far do you, at its closest point, when you first put that BB gun down and you see what's doing, how far do you think that is from you?
So I have actually thought about this quite a bit, and I'm pretty convinced that it was probably about 50 to 60 yards away. It was not very far from me. I look at 50 or 60 yards now because I've done this plenty of times where I just stop at a field, walk out, and pin about 50 or 60 yards, and I walk back to where I parked and look out there, and I'm like, yeah, that's about it. So that's what I tell people. 50 or 60 yards is what I give it.
So you have a BB gun in your hand, and how long had you been on no, and I'm not trying to get like too personal with who owns it and what family member or whatever, but so this was just like a property that you would go to summers, or as you say, spring break, something like that, right?
Yep. So actually, without giving too much information, I grew up in Middletown, Connecticut, which is dead center right in the middle of the state of Connecticut. And the property was in Vermont. It was about 2 hours away from where I lived. And it was exactly one of those situations where, the family went up there once every couple months or in the summertime, Christmas time, Thanksgiving, that kind of stuff.
So if you are out there with the BB gun, let's just focus on that day for right now. Did had you discharged the BB gun at that point in that day, or you were just getting out there and kind of, no pun intended, but scoping the area out?
So this is something I really haven't been asked before. This is a good question. As far as I remember, it wasn't the first place I visited because we did have a tree fort just off the driveway that was built by the person who owns the property. It was built out of 2x4s and plywood, so an established structure on the property. And I went up there and I shot my BB gun in there too. But I mean, BB gun doesn't make much sound whatsoever. It's not like there's no report to it. It's just a it's very simple. And then yeah, I think from there, I was just shooting around the fort, and I don't think I was shooting cans. I wasn't really making much of a ruckus that day. And then after that, I just kind of went for a walk in the woods. And then I'm pretty sure I ended up right there at the field.
Yeah, that's kind of exactly where I was going with that, because we've heard a lot of stories. Bigfoot seems to know what the bang stick is, the boomstick, right? As far as shotguns
Yeah.
and bigger rifles that people go out and shoot animals with, the same things that they're going after for food. So yeah, that's where I was going with that. I just wonder or if it just didn't care, or if it realized that you're a smaller hairless thing out there, and you do have a bang stick, and maybe it did happen to watch that it wasn't one of the other bang sticks that it sees. I don't know, but that's kind of where I was going with that. Is I wonder how much, and this is all just conjecture as per usual, but how much that Bigfoot realized about what was doing with the BB gun versus not an it's not an actual gun.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I've heard reports of these things knowing exactly what guns are, and if you're part of the woo camp, you have a lot of people who say that they have mind speak of hey, don't shoot me or put the gun down. I didn't. That's not something that I experienced. There was no woo aspect to this encounter whatsoever. Yeah, it's something that's boggled my mind for a very long time, and whether or not that thing knew I was there. I don't think it did. I don't think it did. You hear a lot of reports about these things being skittish, about them being very, very secretive, hiding behind tree trunks or taking up sentry in various locations of the woods and being very secretive. And this thing, there was no secretive about it. It was just walking through the field with a deer over its shoulder. I don't know how it attacked the deer. I don't know how it picked it up. I don't know how it snuck up on it. I don't know anything about that. All I know is that when I put my gun down, there it was.
How long had you been on that property up until that point? If it's spring break, you get what, a week, and had you been there a few days already?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I can't recall that one.
No problem. Yeah, no problem. I was just wondering because even if he didn't see you on that particular day, if you had already been there a couple days, and I mean, I remember being a kid and having a BB gun and one of those awesome like pump ones. You put the BBs or the pellets in, like you'd go out all day and do that kind of stuff, right?
That's exactly what it was.
yeah, I love those. Those are the good old days, right? But if it had seen you prior to, and I'm not disagreeing with your aspect of it at all, it definitely may have not seen you at all. But if it had been watching you the days prior, and it's like, oh, it just makes this little like psst, noise. I guess it's not a regular boomstick. And again, conjecture, trying to get in the mind of a Bigfoot, can't do it. But
yeah,
something interesting at least. So, okay. A couple more questions. Sorry, and I'll let you get to the rest of this.
You're good.
The deer being whacked against the tree. Did it re-sling it over its shoulder after it had dispatched it?
I don't think it did. At that point, I'm not gonna lie, I was scared. I was very, very frightened. I was not the best way that I explain it. I don't know if you've ever seen a car accident or seen something happen to somebody or something that's just so far out of the norm that it feels like time kind of slows down. I kind of had that phenomenon happen. It was like one of those things where I felt immediately in danger. And it wasn't long after that thing slammed the deer against a tree that I made the decision to get out of there. So I didn't really keep an eye on it for too long after it did that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Not one single tiny bit. Yeah, so just kind of piggybacking off of that, because that, of course, was going to come up, is the level of fright. And since you admitted that prior to this, you were not familiar with Bigfoot at 9, which, many of us were not. What do you probably, this is probably such a stupid question because you're going to go, of course I don't remember. But do you remember thinking like, oh my God, a monster? Because we've heard people say that. Like, it's all I could think was, oh my God, a monster. Do you remember what you thought of it at that point?
I thought it was a werewolf. I'm not going to lie to you. That's the only thing that made sense in my mind. Werewolves were, just a common character in lore and TV shows and movies and stuff. That's what it reminded me of. I can't tell you whether it had ears on top of its head or if it was built like, the phenomenon of Dogman now. But that's what I thought I saw. And it scared me. It really did. And the reason why it scared me was because of the next story, which actually happened before this one.
Okay, so that's really interesting, Jeremy, to me, because, and that's even something that Aaron and I had talked about, was just kind of with whatever lens you're looking at something through, whatever you have to compare it to, that may be the box that you put it in. So that's interesting. So to you, you're kind of going, well, at that time, I thought werewolf, because that's all I knew is it's a werewolf. And you did also just reiterate that it was thinner than what we know of as Patty on the Patty film. And that's more the build of a dogman or a werewolf, which to also reiterate how many times am I going to say that word in this episode? Sorry, everyone.
Sorry.
I have that every episode. I'm like, there's my word for the episode. Let me repeat this 10 times. But Aaron and I made sure to say, because people were going, well, how could you even use the word werewolf in your doc or in your book? We're not saying werewolf like a person that changes in a full moon and, you know, the Jack Nicholson type and all of that. It's just an interchangeable word, so I just wanted to say that again. There, I avoided the word. I will not say it again. Okay, another probably stupid question, but has it crossed your mind, what if you had got the shot off into its rear end and it hits it and it goes running, but that thing is there? You wouldn't have known at that time. But if you thought about what might have happened to you, if anything, if you had got the shot off and scared the shit out of that deer and it hadn't have been able to grab it, and there you are with it and the deer is gone.
Oh, man. I guess you just gave me something new to think about tonight. No, I've never thought about that. I don't know. I guess one of two things would have happened. It would have looked at me or looked at whatever the source was of that scared the deer away, or it would have chased the deer. One of the two probably would have happened. I don't know. That's a great question.
Yeah, just a little nightmare fuel, just to take your mind down that dark path, I guess. Sorry.
Absolutely.
So just piggyback, and this is, again, going down the rabbit hole, right? To piggyback off of that, and I promise I will let you get to the story prior at some point. I promise you. Do you think then, so take that scenario that I just implanted in your mind. It doesn't go after the deer. It's now looking at you like, what the F, man? Guess you're up. Do you think that Bigfoot is out there taking people when the opportunity arises?
I don't know. You have a lot of different stories. You have the Osman story, where he was taken in his sleeping bag and gave this the male Sasquatch and a family of Sasquatch his snuff that he had on him. You have the phenomenon of missing 411. You have a lot of stuff where people could potentially go missing, and one of the answers that could be is that it was a Bigfoot that took them or something else. Do I think that Bigfoot's out there snatching kids? No, I don't. Is it within the realm of possibility? I think absolutely. You can't say that it's not. I'm happy that I wasn't, or I didn't find out the hard way that day. That's a good thing. But no, personally, I don't know. I think it's just a, animal out there in the woods doing what animals do, just living. If a human is on the menu, then unfortunately, you're never going to find out.
Did you go back out later that day, the next day, or did the old BB gun get put down for a little bit?
Oh, it took me a little while. I picked up the Game Boy more after that, not going to lie to you. But eventually, I have plenty of memories of later on in life in those woods and, doing cool things out there, as young kids do. But I can't say that I went back out there during that visit.
Did you go home and tell anybody?
So here's the thing that kind of sucks, right? I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell the owners of the property. I just kind of kept that to myself. I didn't want to tell everybody that there was a monster out in the woods. I don't know. I don't have any rational explanation for that now. But when, I got back to school, I would tell people that I saw something. And, kids say the darnest things, and some people just look at you like, oh wow, that's really cool. Or some people would say, oh yeah, all right, dude, whatever. And that's kind of what happened, just kind of faded away. It's something I thought about, I would say, on a regular basis for years, until one day I was staying home sick from school. I had watched an episode of In Search Of. I don't know how I got onto it, but I watched it and it was on Bigfoot. That's the day that it all clicked.
Going back again, you may not remember. Time slows down. I get it. I've been there. Had that happen to me in my shadow people's encounter. You see it. It's carrying the deer, and then it takes the deer and whacks it against the tree, which I would imagine made kind of a 50 to 60 yards away is some kind of a sound. Probably wasn't a great sound. Do you remember there being a difference between the moments prior to that and then after seeing it actually kill the deer? Because you actually saw it do that. Do you remember there being a difference in your level of feeling like you were in mortal danger and realizing like, or like, oh shit, like this really is really right there happening right now?
Well, I mean, I was scared from the moment I saw this thing. You know, it took a minute for whatever it was to kind of take hold and me to process it. But at the moment that that deer, that poor thing, hit the tree, yeah, absolutely scared. That was the moment I turned tail. I can't really say the exact evolution of my emotions during the whole thing, other than 2 minutes prior or even less. I was
Right.
just a kid out in the middle of the woods, probably making an absolute ruckus, walking around, cracking sticks and whatnot. Not a care in the world, more worried about throwing something into the tall grass and hopefully getting a quail or some sort of other bird to fly up, to having excitement over possibly shooting the butt of a deer, this the things that kids get excited about, to confusion as to where it went, or more or less confirming that I thought it just ran away. I was more or less thinking I was going to find it again and maybe shoot it from a different distance. Then I was definitely confused when I saw it on the shoulder of something walking upright, just covered in hair or fur, to being petrified when the thing started screaming, and then going into the flight mode when I saw it get slammed against a tree. I don't know if that quite answers your question, but that's pretty much how I felt.
No, and I appreciate you trying to. I know it's so hard because it's so long ago, and so you'll have to pardon my next question, because if someone asked me this about my encounter, I wouldn't remember this. Do you remember if there was any wind or breeze that day?
So are you asking about like a smell?
Mm-hmm. If you would have been upwind or
My
downwind
scent?
is such a thing.
No idea. I have no idea. But I have been asked the question of whether or not the creature smelled. I can't remember that either. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I know that they're said to have a absolutely, skunky, musky odor to them, but I can't recall anything.
Yeah, I've gotten more and more away as the years have gone on with even asking that question, because I feel like if they smelled it, they will say it. It's not something that they forget. And I find that actually in most that I've come across, there is no smell from the creature anyhow. So yeah, my question was actually more geared towards if you were downwind or upwind of the thing, because it just, and like I said, I wouldn't friggin' remember that in my encounter. So you did in fact leave first, right? It was still in view when you turned and said, "Screw this, I'm out," which was very wise, by the way. But you didn't watch it walk away into the sunset kind of thing, right?
Oh, but I do remember faintly the run back home, or to the house. It wasn't that far. It must have been probably about an eighth of a mile. But I remember having that sensation, when you flip the switch in your house and you have to go up the stairs and you feel like something's chasing you. I had that feeling the entire time. Like, I mean, I was absolutely petrified. I felt like I was being hunted, with absolutely no reason whatsoever, because honestly, I don't think the thing even knew I was there, to be honest with you. But the sensation of being absolutely petrified was there for sure.
At that time, where was the closest neighbor?
Oh, uh, so this is a very, very rural area. So it's on what they call a mountain, but it's actually, I would probably refer to it as like a really big hill, possibly a small mountain. And there's only a handful of cabins or houses on that little piece of geographical um, land. It's not very developed. It's out there. It's very, very quiet. The people who wanted it bought it for seclusion, and they definitely got that with that property.
And that was back then and today, actually?
I don't know. I have no idea about today. I haven't been back to the property in quite a while. There was changes in my life that happened where, I moved to Florida with my dad, and that we never really had the opportunity to ever go back. I moved to Florida between my sophomore and junior year of high school. So, shoot, it was 5 years after that. Yeah, roughly 5, 6 years after the occurrence that it happened. And ever since I left for Florida, I never went back.
But the someone in the family does still own that property?
As far as I know, I'm probably, for the people in my family, they're going to hear the story and they're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. And I can kind of give you a little bit more information off air if you don't mind.
Oh, of
Um,
course, yeah.
but there's definitely a reason why, I wouldn't know that answer.
Now, have you done any research on that area? I would assume that, I mean, and of course, you were 9 and you didn't share this with anyone, so this is a moot point as far as, did you go talk to the neighbor? Of course you didn't. You were 9 and you didn't tell anybody about the encounter. But were there any whispers around the area? And did you ever come across in your research online anybody putting in something at the BFRO, even if you take the radius quite far out, as we know, these things seem to migrate. That seems to be the agreed upon action of these. And I think that their radius is a whole hell of a lot bigger than what ours would be if we were living in the woods. But have you come across any other reports in that area?
So I have spent my life absolutely obsessed with this event. And yes, I have looked at the BFRO. There are there's not a lot of reports from that specific county, but the neighboring counties, there's plenty. I mean, this is in the middle of rural Vermont. There are tons of encounters in the area. But the one thing that really highlighted my research into the area and the possible Bigfoot sightings, and I believe it was actually through a BFR report that I kind of got down this path of the rabbit hole, was one of the reports mentioned that they witnessed it picking blueberries. And, I had remembered because I have tons and tons of books. I have so many. It's kind of embarrassing how many books I have on Bigfoot and such. But there are quite a few books and documentaries that make mention of this being a migratory creature. And sometimes they are known to migrate with food. And in that time frame, early spring, we used to get a quite a bit of different berries growing around the property. If I had to put my money on it, that's why it was there.
Yeah, it's got berries, and then that poor deer. At least it dispatched
Right.
it pretty quickly. But okay, I think this is the last question in regards to this encounter. Again, tough question. Can you guess how tall it was?
So this is another question that I've been asked quite a bit. I mean, to 9-year-old me, the thing was 10 feet tall. But if I really had to think about it now that I'm older and, replaying it as much as I can with as much detail as I can in my head over and over and over again, I don't think it was nearly as tall as what gets reported all the time. I mean, I remember my dad being somebody who's just this big man, but he's under 6 feet tall. I mean, I was looking at a pretty big being, but I don't think it was any bigger than a human that I've ever seen.
Right.
It wasn't something that was absolutely monstrous. So my best guess is that it was between 6 and 7 feet tall, somewhere within that. I know that's a pretty wide range, but I don't think that this thing was overly big.
And how much, sorry, I guess it wasn't the last. How much of it did you actually see? Was there any tall grass? Did you see its butt and back of its legs and the whole thing?
I wish I could go back in time and answer this question, because this is another thing I get asked quite a bit. As far as I remember, I just remember seeing it from the waist up. I can't even tell you really how tall the grass was exactly. I have no idea.
Yeah, no,
I know it
that's
was
fine.
tall enough. It was tall enough to be able to see the hindquarters of a deer. So I don't know, 2 feet tall. So the bottom 2.5 feet were cut off from this animal, whatever it was. That's I can't tell you muscular structure. I can't tell you any of that.
No, that's fine. I figured as much. I just know people will message me and say, "Why did you
I
not
get
ask
you.
this very simple question?"
I understand.
Yeah, sorry.
Totally.
Sorry about that. Yeah, and besides that, guys, if you saw anything with a deer slung over its damn shoulder, you're gonna be a little bit focused on that half of the creature no matter how much you see of it, I would imagine. So, yeah. Okay, so I think I'm done with that now, like officially. So if you wanted to go to the next thing that you wanted to talk about, go right ahead. Thanks, Jeremy.
So this is the reason why I say this second is because I'm not 100% sure what or if I actually even saw anything. Basically, the way that this house is set up, all the kids used to sleep downstairs in a finished basement. And they used to have a huge red sectional couch. And the various children would make forts out of the pieces of the couch, and others would set up their bed on two of the sections. And myself, I just became, I kind of liked the regular couch that faced a absolute big giant sliding glass door. Half, so if you look at the room with four walls, half of the walls are glass. And the closest point that the tree line is to one of these glass windows is about 15 feet. So not very far. And then the window that used to sleep next to, which was just a regular sofa, which faced a window. Out that window, the yard went for about, I'd say, 50 feet, 50 to 60 feet, if that, before it kind of banked downwards and there was a little creek that ran through the property. But one night, now, ever since I was a kid, I sleep with the TV on. It's the same thing I do now, same thing I did back when I want to say I was 7 at this time. So this was years before that encounter, by the way. It was the middle of the night, and the TV, which my relative, sorry, I was trying not to give off too much information. My relative used to have us put like a sleep timer on it, and it was always set for 2 hours because that was the max that it could go. Well, I woke up in the middle of the night and it was off, and middle of the night with a big glass door next to my head was, something I was scared of. Not gonna lie, I'm afraid of the dark, very, very afraid of the dark as a kid. And I got up and I went to go turn the TV back on. I saw what I thought at the time was a man run into the woods. Uh, I'm pitch black, absolutely dark out. The only light was possibly the light of the moon. Can't tell you if it was cloudy, can't tell you if it was not. All I know is that I was able to make out the shape of a man running into the woods. And instead of making it to the TV to turn it back on, I ran back onto the couch and threw myself underneath the blankets and was not able to fall asleep the rest of the night. All I did was poke my eyes out of the blanket and try to look out in the woods to see if I could see it again, but that is it. That's the whole story.
Creepy to think, whether it's a man or a Bigfoot, how long was it standing there just looking at you?
So this is also something that I've dissected quite a bit, and the thing I hate the most is being the professional of my own story. I don't know, I just really don't care for it too much. But through my own investigations and replaying it in my mind, I was kind of lucky that the TV was off at that point. Well, both lucky and unlucky, because if the TV was on, it would have created a glare on the inside of the glass, and I would never have seen this thing whatsoever. I would never have known that it was there. I would never have got up. I would have just stayed asleep, and this thing could have potentially been watching us the entire night. No idea. It was only for the fact that it was dark inside and was dark outside that I was even able to see anything.
Did it look like to you? You're like, oh, that's a big dude. Like, did it look big?
I
I mean, again,
don't.
you're 7 at this point. I should say you're 7, and a lot of people, most people look big to you, but so you don't remember anything remarkable about it. Basically, you just thought, hey, it's a dude running into the woods.
Just thought it was a person.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was, an escaped prisoner or my dad or a Bigfoot or a werewolf or anything. I just thought it was a person that ran into the woods. I didn't even think much of it other than, wow, that's kind of not right.
Did you tell anybody about that?
I did tell them about. Of course, I don't think there was a lot of stock put into what I said at the time. But yeah, that I do remember saying that to my father.
Do you remember anybody going outside the next day to look for any, footprints or any evidence that this had happened, or who was there?
Not at all. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I'd rather you just say, yeah, no, I have no clue. Who could blame you? That was a long time ago. Creepy nonetheless, and the fact that what happens to you a couple years later, that certainly ties in.
That's the real scary part because who knows? I mean, maybe this thing was comfortable with us. Maybe it was the same individual. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe there's a migrating clan or a different entity altogether. I don't know. It's one of those questions that will always be a question to me.
Would you guys normally go up there just for spring breaks, or would it be spring breaks and some of the summertime?
Oh yeah. Well, we spent all kinds of time up there in the summer.
Okay. And if you guys weren't there, was there any kids there?
No. Um, this person actually didn't live there full time. This was something that they rented out quite a bit.
Oh, so they rented it out to just random
And
whoever's wanted to come, kids or no kids. Interesting. Okay. Well, yeah, I wonder if just the presence of children would be of interest to these things, or if it was by itself. I don't think that they normally are, but yeah, I just wonder if you guys' presence alone would bring that thing in. Like, ooh, look at the entertainment over here.
possibility of it. I have no idea though.
So the first thing that you shared, you're seeing the Bigfoot with the deer over its shoulder. Are you glad that you had that happen to you? How do you feel about the fact that you saw that thing? Do you feel lucky?
So, this is a very common question. That and would you ever do it again? You ask 9-year-old me, absolutely not. Absolutely not. This was not something that I was pleased to have seen. I'm grateful for it now because it set me up to have this incredible passion for the unknown that I'm extremely proud of, and it helps with multiple different facets of my life. So the older me, the current me, yes, I'm happy that it's happened. When I was younger, not very much. The second part of this question normally is would you like to see it again? And the answer is not in that fashion. Not in a fashion where I'm in a defenseless position. But if I'm seeing it from my car and I can speed away from it all day, I would do that all day. But being out in the middle of the woods unarmed at 9 years old, or even 35 right now, probably not the smartest thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. And if we go off the let's go off the thought that it did know that you were there, but it just wanted to go with what its original want and need was, and that was the deer. I mean, it could have taken you in a heartbeat, and nobody would have known what in the hell happened to you, right? So, I mean, I think that does play back into what your thought was, that you're like, no, on the whole, I don't feel like they're taking people. Do they not do that because they know it will bring out more of the hairless, things to the woods and it causes problems for us? I don't know if they can problem solve that far. Maybe they can, but it certainly could have taken you, no problem. If we're going off the assumption it did know that you were there.
Yeah. It's this is another one of those things where this is just an unknown aspect of this creature that nobody really knows 100% about. I mean, there are plenty of stories that say that this thing is well aware of mankind, and they go out of their way to make decisions in their lives to stay away or to prevent uh, confrontation from happening. But I don't know. I mean, if they actively knew that we were there, I mean, I guess they would have to. They would have to have known that humans or whatever we are to them call this place home, or at least a common place for them to stop and rest. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question quite like you wanted there, Shannon, but
No, that's great. I mean, it's all conjecture anyway, right? So, I mean, who really
yeah.
knows? There are no experts in this field. So, well, Jeremy, thank you so much for coming on. Please let everybody know where to find you, any social links that you want to throw out there, and of course, everywhere that everyone can find your podcast.
Infinite Rabbit Hole. You can find us at infiniterabbithole.com. We have links to multiple different podcast players. I mean, whatever your podcast player of choice is, just look for Infinite Rabbit Hole. We have over 140 different episodes for you to listen to. It ranges from everything from Bigfoot to the simulation theory and everything in between. It's just, one week we could be talking about something that you absolutely find yourself constantly researching yourself to something that you may never have even heard of and find yourself loving a whole new subject. If you want to go on over to facebook.com and look for the Infinite Rabbit Hole group. Mostly this is just used for news and information regarding the show, but I like to post articles and stuff on there too of various different things. And by all means, this could be a way for anybody that wants to ask questions. If anybody does have questions or, want me to come on their show or they want to come on ours, infiniterabbithole@gmail.com. Please reach out. Love talking to people, and I would love to hear your story just like you heard mine today. And that's pretty much it, Shannon.
Now, love the story, Jeremy. Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on.